I want to talk a little bit more about the troops themselves and our forces over there, who are fighting a war that, it's this will they won't they kind of thing. They're prepared, but their logistics are perhaps failing. They are no longer living on base, right?
Yeah.
Because
so we definitely need to get into this. Now, before I even get on my rant about this, understand I'm not some person just saying this. I was the executive assistant to the commander of Military Sealift Command. Military Sealift Command is responsible for all the replenishment ships and the logistics that float in the entire United States military. I had to work with that admiral directly for over a year and a half. Okay. So when I tell you this was my life, that lasted, you can ask my wife, freaking 18-hour days dealing with this. I know this intimately. That's number one. Number two, based on also past experiences, being an XO of a cruiser in the Middle East, being in charge of the security forces in the Persian Gulf, specifically the Strait of Hormuz, I'm not pulling this out of my ass. When I tell you, when I saw those pictures that went viral of, something that looked like, how did Meredith describe it in the chat, looked like a rubber sole to a shoe and all of this, I immediately perked up because, Sam, we talked about this weeks ago before this happened. Because if y'all recall, I mentioned that the bases that I worked at in the Middle East had been bombed. And I said, that's a problem because those are logistical nodes. And lo and behold, we have those pictures that came out. Now, here's the thing. Are the sailors starving? Probably not. What Hegseth released, he retweeted the chief of naval operations, Admiral Caudle, and they said, hey, these ships left with 30 plus days of food, blah, blah, blah. You're absolutely right. Here's what they're not telling you. Number one, it's been more than 30 days. They got replenished right at the beginning of this, but as the logistical train started to shut down, options went away. Number two, in their initial response to the report, they showed sailors, they released pictures the next day of sailors breaking out food from the stores. Unless you've been on a ship, you want to understand this, but everything they broke out was canned goods. We have canned everything, canned meat, canned peas, all for these type of contingencies. They did not go into what they call the reefers, where they have the large freezers and the large refrigeration units that keep fresh food. I did not see one picture. I looked, and as an XO of a cruiser, second in command, my job was to inspect that every day and to look at the food and make sure we were getting it. So I did this for a living in the Middle East. I know how often those ships of the Combat Logistics Force, those replenishment ships, are supposed to come alongside and give you fresh stuff. When they talked about the mail that was being held on station, the United States Postal Service delivers mail to what's called FPOs, Fleet Post Offices, which you can have a zip code, and 27 zip codes have been suspended because those care packages coming from families have no place to go in the Middle East and be stored because the warehouses have been bombed out. I literally watched the video of one of them getting blown up in Bahrain, and the one that I was responsible for in UAE, I got pictures of it being blown to hell. So stop with this, oh, that's all a bunch of BS, blah, blah. They have since gotten food. There's no question that they have figured out a way to do this. But the initial complaints were accurate, and they did not think through the logistics of getting fresh food, this, that, and the other to these people. One of the reasons why this ceasefire is such a big deal, Pete Hegseth himself said it. We're reloading our forces and replenishing our forces because they didn't have anything to goddamn eat that was fresh, and you were out of ammunition because you could not restock them. Period. And you cannot sit there and tell me that that is not the case. Dude, I know for a fact because I lived it. And so the lies, and Maxine, you hit on it. The care packages that you get from home, where they'll send you goodies, but more importantly, like letters trying to keep up with you and to encourage you. It is a direct hit on morale. And so the care packages that these sailors and Marines got before the supply line got cut off had maybe some cookies. Girl Scout cookies are real popular, especially this time. They're over there rationing them and handing them out to one another because the ship store where you can go get little stuff to go and watch, gone. It's empty. The fresh fruits and vegetables, empty. Mail, not happening. This is not something that was made up. These families that had to do this anonymously and complain about it know that their stuff's not getting there. And that's what's terrible about it. It's a complete lack of thought.
It's a complete lack of thought. But look, here's my question for you. There are a lot of people who have been trained as you have, who have thought about this and who are advising someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of this was foreseeable. I mean, you foresaw all of this yourself.
Yes.
Who was it that was not listening, and what was going on in their minds when this war began? Did they really think it was going to just be a 2 or 3 day war? And how is that possible?
So, without being in the room, but being around powerful people who make those decisions at one point in my life, I can tell you a couple of things. It is not a coincidence that President Trump, unretired then Lieutenant General Kane, got a waiver and promoted him to 4 stars to become chairman of the Joint Chiefs. The one constant that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has had to do since the invention of that seat, basically in World War II, was to tell the president of the United States uncomfortable truths. Uncomfortable truths. Now, historically speaking, the presidents that actually had military service listened more than the presidents who didn't. There's my observation, and this includes, Bush, Clinton, even Obama to a degree. There's always been this hesitation to take the military advice straight because it's an area of expertise that they don't have. They're civilians. Now, that being said, I honestly believe that there were people in the room trying to convey this message. The mistake that we had to deal with was Donald Trump saw Venezuela go off relatively well without a hitch. From a military execution operation, unbelievable, right? He thought the same thing was going to happen in Iran, despite those of us who served saying, bruh, this is a different animal. There's a reason why the 7 dudes before you did not do this, or the 6 dudes. The last dude that tried was Carter, and you saw what happened there. And Carter was a vet. He was a Naval Academy graduate too. So history again is telling you not to do it. Trump was high on his own supply. Hegseth, as a basically recovering addict, was high on that adrenaline too. That's why I was not surprised when the New York Times released the article saying Hegseth was the one pushing for this, along with Netanyahu. Makes total sense. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance said no, and Marco Rubio said no. That is why Marco has been removed from this whole process,
right?
Because he was not for it. But all of this information is readily available, right? They chose not to listen to it. The United States structured itself to have civilian leadership of its armed forces because they did not want what was happening at the time in Europe, where military leaders were doing this, going back to the ancient Romans, and then right after our Constitution was put into place, watching Napoleon damn near take over a continent because he was a military leader and a political leader. We understood the significance of having civilians curtail the military. But what we have here is a reversal of roles, where it's the military trying to curtail the politician because he has an inferiority complex when it comes to certain things, him dodging the draft, all of this. It's a role reversal. I never thought I'd see that historically in America, but that's exactly what we're dealing with. And this is where it goes sideways, because you have a hesitant military. Members are calling the conscientious objector line all over the place. You have a military that is willing to do whatever for its country, that feels like this is an exercise in ego. And be completely frank, many military members have said, we're going to war for Israel.
Right.
That is a whole nother aspect too. So that's how we've gotten here.